Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good day. This is Dr. Nur Fazila Ahmad. In this video, I will give you brief discussion on research ethics related specific ethical issues. The outlines of this presentation are the importance of research ethics, the ethical issues which are deception, plagiarism and anti-plagiarism, objectivity and avoidance of bias, fabrication and falsification, authoritative creativity, recommended strategies to maintain research ethics and scientific integrity in research projects, and lastly, copyright materials. For the introduction, ethical research is essential for generating evidence before we can start conducting any research. Research ethics concerns the responsibility of researcher to be honest and respectful to all individuals who are affected by their research studies or their reports of the studies results. There are several reasons why it is important for us to adhere to ethical norms in research. First, by having research ethics, we can promote the aims of the research, such as knowledge, truth, and avoidance from any error, which we will discuss further in next slide. Second, by having research ethics, it can support the values required for collaborative work, since research involves lots of cooperation and coordination with many people in different disciplines and institutions. It requires a lot of trust, accountability, and mutual respect for each researcher. Third, research ethics means that researchers can be held accountability for their actions. For example, any policies related to misconduct, conflict of interest, human subject protections, and animal care and use are important to make sure the researcher accountable for their actions. Number 4, research ethics can ensure that the public can trust research. People more interested to involve or volunteer to cooperate research projects if they can trust the quality and integrity of research. Lastly, research ethics can support the important social norms and moral values, such as social responsibility, human rights, animal welfare, compliance with law, and health and safety. There are some areas of ethical issues that I will discuss in this presentation. First is about deception. Deception in research may sometimes occur if it is necessary to conduct a study without fully informing participants about the true purpose and the nature of the study, because it may affect the accuracy of the results. As a researcher, we must ensure that all our participants do not suffer any stress as a result of the procedure, and also we must make sure that the participants are fully debriefed at the end of the study. Deception must be justified in terms of some significant benefit that outweigh the risk to the participants. We as a researcher must consider all alternatives to deception and must justify the rejection of any alternative procedures. There are two types of deception. First is a passive deception, or usually we can call it as omission. Passive deception is the withholding or omitting of information which the researcher intentionally does not tell participants some information about the study. Second type of deception is active deception or commission. Active deception is the presenting of misinformation about the study to participants. The most common form of active deception is misleading participants about the specific purpose of the study. Next is about plagiarism and anti-plagiarism. So, what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is using someone else's ideas, writing, or drawing without giving them proper credit in your work. It's always happened with the student work as well. With the advance of the internet, the ability of research is greater, which makes us more tempting to use it. For the students, it can occur unintentionally with students and researchers if they are careless or non-systematic about their pre-writing and revision to a paper or manuscript. For example, you find an article on the internet that says exactly what you would like to say in your thesis. You copy a few sentences and forget to add citations. So, that can call as plagiarism. You must remember that you must try to avoid plagiarism at all costs. Nowadays, many institutions are assessing plagiarism software such as Turnitin. This software can generate a report to let you know if there are any phrases or paragraphs in your paper that are located somewhere else in other publication paper. Therefore, as advised, always make sure that you write a source of citation for words or any ideas that are not your own. Always include that source on your reference page. Another common practice you can do is to circulate drafts of papers among scholars or your friends who are known to be working in a specific area, which can give credit where credit is due. Next, objectivity and avoidance of bias. As a researcher, we need to be objectivity and avoidance of any bias. You should aim to avoid, to reduce and eliminate bias, prejudice, or subjective evaluation which may include during design, data analysis, interpretation, and peer review. Personal interest, for example, your feelings or thought of your belief, where you allow the data to drive your interpretation. Yes, However, in reality, sometimes we all have bias and prejudice. What we need to do as a good researcher to realize that we have bias and try to minimize them as much as possible. For the financial interests that may affect, if you're doing a research funded by any groups or company or institution, you need to make sure that you state when your research is published. In case people believe that a company, for example, pharmaceutical company has a bias and give you money to do research project that will lead the result that they want to see. But you need to report that anybody that give you funding, that doesn't mean your results are incorrect or biased. Next, we look at fabrication and falsification. Occasionally, or sometimes, a scientist or researcher might be caught by making up their research. There is a technical term, we call it as cooking the data. For example, the researcher said that they only need a few more subjects, but I am running out of time. Falsification also can occur with a cited literature. So be careful how you are interpreting what an author said. If it ain't there, don't make it up out of thin air. So there is another reason you should rely primarily on the original source, without quoting or cited from other sources. The aspect that students or you should be aware of, continuing the data collection from the participants who are not meeting the requirement of the research. For example, you have a subject come in with a hangover and you use the data anyway. Malfunctioning of the equipment, inappropriate treatment of subject, recording data inaccurately. The non-publication of data refers to not including data because they are not support the hypothesis. Sometimes in the data, there are extreme scores or outliers, and these outliers are trimmed from the data. They can result in non-significant findings but should automatically be cut. Non-significant results often give just as much important information as a significant result. Another issue that should be considered when you look at research ethics is who receives credit as an author. Anyone who names on the study must make a primary contribution. It is unethical to include someone on a study if they did not make any contribution. So you cannot always add another person on your studies and they do the same on their study. So both of you get credit for being authors on multiple studies. You must make a primary contribution in order to receive your name on the report. Now, if you have a research project as a group in your class, oftentimes you put the names in alphabet, right? Which is the easiest things to do in a group because then you don't get into a fight and so forth. But I have students leave off a member of a group who did not participate, and you usually have the opportunity to evaluate your peers. but the author on a published report should make a primary contribution. So they might gather data, they might interpret the data, they might write the literature review, they have to make a meaningful effect. All these need to be decided before the research is started. Two rules help to define authorship. Technicians are not necessarily author. Data collectors are not necessarily included in authorship. Authorship should include only those who are directly contributed. As I mentioned before, they might gather data, they might interpret the data, they might write the literature review, they have to make a meaningful impact. As soon as possible, you want to establish the order of authorship, you need to say who's the first author, who's the second author, who's the third, and whatever the responsibility each of these author. So, how you want to maintain research ethics and scientific integrity? As I mentioned before, everything must be satisfied, must be clear before conduct any research. Therefore, you must develop a research plan. Who will do what? When you want to do it? How you want to perform or to conduct that research? You must submit protocol and ethical review before conduct any research. Therefore, you must prepare well with your research community and agree with any authorship. How you want to maintain during conduct of research? You must follow the approved protocol. You must gain the consent from the participants. You must involve in the community. Try to protect yourself, your team, and your participants. You must regularly check your data. After research, you can share your study reports and return something back to the research community. You must publish the articles of your studies following publication ethics. Don't forget to use reference management software. Next, about copyright materials. Copyright is the exclusive right to control creative works which created by the author, copyright owner, and performer of specific period governed under the Copyright Act 1987. You can have copyright many types of your work, such as literacy works, musical works if you have, artistic work, films, sounds recordings, derivative works. If you want to use any figures or table from other published source, must remember you must get the permission to avoid plagiarism happen. Okay, quotes are okay if properly referenced. Usually it is not a problem getting permission for educational purposes. So don't worry to get a permission if the things or if the items that you need for your research to get the permission. Summary. As a researcher, we must follow technical guidelines when conducting and report research to prevent any unethical issues and maintain scientific integrity of the study. So, therefore,